If you've not had the pleasure of attending a plan commission meeting before, this is the way things go. After we call the roll and approve the minutes, hopefully, we go through our agenda. What happens is the city staff presents on an item. After they present, it's open just to the plan commission for technical questions on that item. Once we're done with our questions, we open it up to the public for comments or questions. If you have something to say about a topic, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. And please try to keep your comments as close to the topic as possible. Also, I would ask that you silence your cell phones if you have not already, because it can be very distracting if they are going off during the meeting. And with that, let's call the roll.
David Borsick,
Present.
Ed Bowen, Thomas Wojtek,
Here.
John Hintz,
Here.
Steve Cummings,
Here.
Kathleen Prop,
Here.
John Kiefer, Robert Weigert, sorry,
Here.
Michael Ford.
Here.
All right. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from December 19th. Do we have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion clearly passes. Let us move on to item number 1, residential design standards variance to allow window area reduction at 1333 West Bent Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
So this item is a request to allow a design standards variance for window area reduction and elimination at 1333 West Bent Avenue. Applicable ordinance, section 30-241B1, prohibits the reduction or elimination of window openings on the front and first 20 feet of the side facades. So that's why the applicant is here requesting a variance. The property is in blue here. And so all the windows to be reduced and eliminated would be on the front facade, so it'd be the north facade of the house there facing Bent. It is zoned SR9 single-family residential, and all the immediate surrounding properties are SR9 single-family residential. The 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use recommendation is residential for both 10 and 20-year for this property. So this is the existing property here, and the windows to be reduced are circled up top there. From my understanding of what the applicant's narrative was, the window on the ground floor there is a kitchen window, and the window above that, I'm not sure the use of that room. The window to the right of the front door there is to be eliminated, and that, from my understanding, is a dining room from what the applicant's narrative said. And if the applicant's here, she can speak to that more if need be. Here's some context. Right now, the current windows, we as staff determined that they fit in architecturally with some of the surrounding context. On the right there, properties to the east on the upper right, right next door to the property, that right one there with the standing seam roofing. And then to the left of that is further east from the subject property right here. A lot of the windows are vertically oriented. There are some, I think there's like one here that's more square, more horizontal in orientation, but most of them are vertically oriented. These here, for example, these are across the street. Vertically oriented windows here, a few that are a little bit different, but generally pretty similar in appearance. And then the subject property here on the left, the property to the west, you can see some similar windows here in their orientation and somewhat similar size there. Staff felt that the current windows contrast nicely with the horizontal nature of the siding, and they fit in with the context of the surrounding properties. Here is actually my quick rendition of the existing state of the current property. And based on the information I received from the applicant, this is my quick sketch of what it appears they want to do. They want to reduce the height of the window on the ground floor here to allow a kitchen sink, I presume, underneath. This window, they wanted to reduce the height of this, citing safety concerns. This window here would be eliminated, and they said due to safety. This window would be reduced in area, I think in height. According to Mr. Birch, he was out there, and apparently this window, if I'm correct, was actually between when we got the request for the variance and now has already been, started to be closed off. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it sounds like the applicant has already started to close this window off here. Recommendation of this, based on the information we were provided, staff is unable to establish that a hardship exists justifying the perceived negative impact the window reductions and elimination will have on the front facade of the home with the information provided. Therefore recommends denial of the variance at this time, with the understanding that if the applicant is here, she may present more information that the Plan Commission can use to, in turn, approve in a more informed manner the variance request. We felt that the proposed window changes would be out of character with the house and with the surrounding homes and the rest of the neighborhood.
That it?
Yep.
All right, technical questions. Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item? Come on up and tell us your name and address, and then let's see if we can work this out.
Elizabeth Nazario, I own the property at 1333.
Got it.
As far as the window, it's framed inside, the window next to the front door. It is framed inside, and the window can go back in there. We have another window. It's just for safety reasons from the, reading the codes and things that, when we replaced it, there's a back window that we had replaced. And they said within 3 feet, I believe, of a door, a main door, interior, exterior door. So that's what, again, safety there was the replacement to remove that window instead of being pretty much right on top of the door. The other, as far as the kitchen, I would like to bring that up just simply because the countertop would be there. And sink under that as well. As far as all the windows throughout the house are very close to the floor. I guess that's, just long windows. It looks like that's what they did when they built the house, but for safety reasons, my grandsons can just, one step up and they're in the window. And I didn't think it was so safe. I have 3 grandchildren. But as far as that counter in the kitchen and bringing that window up, the window upstairs is, again, one of the windows that most of the windows is where my grandchildren can just take a step up and be in the window. I wanted it to match a little bit better. If we did take the window in the kitchen and bring that up, I thought it would match better if I had to keep it similar in size just above it. If you look, I do understand that some of the properties, the house directly next to me has windows very similar to mine in the front, but then there's a living room area that they have just the tiniest window in there. And if anything, I was thinking that would look more out of place than what mine, and I don't want to pick on my neighbors. I don't know if there's one here, but I do have a degree in interior design, not architectural design, but I just thought, trying to make it look as pretty, as it should be. We do have plans to replace all the windows in the house and side it this coming summer.
Okay, will you answer some questions if so?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, John.
Were you planning on doing all of the windows in the house, raising those off of the floor like that?
Yes.
Is that a problem throughout the whole house?
Yes.
And you said you do have grandkids that are over quite a bit?
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if that doesn't count, if that's a hardship, if it being safety issues, windows being, how far from the floor are they?
I want to say
Approximately, I'm not gonna,
I want to say approximately 18 inches, maybe. 18. I believe I may have put it in the report as well. I know that my oldest grandson can just crawl right up in the window, and that immediately was a concern.
Any other questions for the petitioner, as long as she's here? Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, I was confused when I drove by the house today.
Okay.
It looks as though there are new windows in
In some of the
on
area.
the front. We're talking about it. There's one new window to the right of the front door.
Yes.
That's small.
Yes.
And you said, I think you said, or the staff said that
It's
the other
framed.
window had been removed already. But then the one on the left that I think we're talking about, the one in question, is large and it looks new.
It looks newer, and some of the windows in the house do look newer. However, I know for sure one of those, there's 3 or 4 newer windows in that house. And one of those windows for sure needs to be pulled out and redone. Remember John's last name, one of the city inspectors, had just been riding by and saw that I needed backing a trailer into the yard and had offered to just come and look at the house. And he had said, you know, this is a new window, but it looks like it's installed improperly. So the window in the very front, though, is a window that makes absolutely no sense. I'm not sure if that's one of the windows that's installed correctly, but it just makes no sense. It doesn't even match the rest of the house. Most of the windows, they are vertically, size-wise, it's good, but the style of the window is newer.
You're right, the style seems
Different.
inappropriate,
Right.
the current window. But I was unclear, and I don't see a drawing here that is labeled properly, if there is
Okay.
one here, about what the new window would look like to the left of the door. And is it going to be exactly the same as the windows on the second floor?
It will
I
be
mean,
the,
what are you proposing?
it would be, the same style window. So
And I'm unclear what the style is
as far as
going to
the
be. and-
seam running through the middle of the window,
Okay,
On the right side.
you know what I mean? So the pushing the window up and down versus side to side.
Double hung.
oh, okay, so you're proposing to basically run it side to side? The one on the
Proposing
right
not
is what
to.
you're.
The other one is side to side. I would propose that we go up and down
Casement.
and still match the house like the
Is that a double hung window on the right?
Casements.
It's-
A new one?
as far as I know, yes. I'm not.
Okay, because it's got the, call it the sash in the middle.
Yes.
Instead of the,
Up and down,
and
right,
down.
right.
At the time.
Right, and I would like to have it all through the middle for the whole house.
okay, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioner, as long as she is here? Go ahead, David.
I'm a little unclear of the process. I'm not unsympathetic of what you're trying to do. But did you have a contractor doing this work, or? Okay, so would this normally have been a permit type thing to do beforehand? So it's out of sync?
And, right, and that was something, when John rode by, I didn't realize that this had existed. He said, anything in the front of the house, so we stopped what we were doing. Just have everything closed up, it's still framed if we need to, but John rode by, and since then, we've contacted him probably more than he wants us to. So-
I'm unclear about the safety aspect of the window on the what it was the porches, the dining room.
It was lower to the floor, it was closer to the floor, so that was brought up.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for the petition? Anything else for us right now? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission, let's chat. Ed?
I probably had a technical question that I should have asked before, but is the concern here on the percentage reduction, or is the concern on the type of window being proposed for the replacement?
I think it was more the type, I mean, my understanding, based on what we were provided for images, was that it would be more horizontally oriented. Kind of conferred with senior staff on this. I think they arrived at the same conclusion.
So from a size standpoint, we're not reducing it to the point that it would trigger.
I don't know. We don't have the actual size. We don't have the actual size.
think
of
we-
one,
I think we
because it's
did,
you're allowed
actually.
a 10% variation. I think they I don't
Yeah.
know if we ran the numbers on the 10% variation.
I think it would be more than 10%, I know that.
That's the
Yeah.
issue. So it's both orientation and area.
Yes, I did put the sizes in there,
Yep.
and it is more than 10%.
I put them in the
Okay,
staff
so
report too.
There, that's the technical answer. is
And
it's
that's where I
more-
guess I didn't, is the
That's what's driving the
percentage-
request.
I guess that was my question, is in the analysis, I don't see, I see the sizes, I just don't see the percentages, like how far off we are, is it a 12% reduction, is it a 24? I don't know.
I
And
believe it was less than 20%.
Okay. And I guess I'm a little curious what that number would be, just based on me not being able to do the math in my head. And I would probably tend to concur with you guys that the horizontal orientation of that does sort of take away from, probably the intended style of the original windows, which were the, double, sort of two-time double hung type windows. It does look like it's a little different, but again, I think, this is your drawing?
Yep.
It's nice.
Thanks.
That's really nice. Without seeing anything in more detail, I guess it's a little bit hard, like it sounds like for you guys in looking at this.
Yeah.
It's hard for you guys to evaluate this as well. You don't necessarily have the product, you don't necessarily have a drawing other than,
And the applicant talked a lot more today. I
Right.
felt, versus, in the narrative, it was pretty short, it just
Yeah.
kind of said safety concerns,
Yep.
and we weren't really sure what are those,
Yeah.
what did those consist of? Was the kitchen sink always where it's going to be, or is this,
right.
what was the nature of that?
And yeah, and is this a converted attic that would maybe have those lower, would be closer to the floor?
No.
On that, it's hard to, without, is that 18 inches, is it 12
That-
inches, is it?
That's actually a
4?
bedroom,
Okay.
and it was there when I purchased the house.
No, I mean, like, in the 1880s.
Oh,
was it
oh,
built as
I'm
an
sorry.
attic? No, it's, like, that could potentially, be a hardship if those are that low to the floor. I certainly am not unsympathetic. I have 3 really small kids who try to jump out windows all the time. So,
Sounds like an item for another
I
meeting.
hear you. Yeah, this is between me and my therapist. Don't worry about
If you
that.
look at the house that's next door, though, their windows
Yeah.
are very, very similar to
Yep.
mine, except for that one tiny window, that one there.
Yeah,
They're right next door.
right. I guess I would tend to think that there's maybe something that can be done here, and that I don't know that we need to necessarily deny anything. Maybe this lends itself to a layover for you guys to get a better handle on what sort of product we're looking at. I get what you're going for, and it doesn't sound like we're trying to do something too far off, so that would be my thought.
That's a really good point. Other discussion?
I'll second.
Oh,
David?
and that, maybe this goes to the sort of what we're trying to get at, but I'm more familiar with these sort of traditional double hungs, but are there similar products that give the same event, but we're more vertical orientated?
And maybe that's a conversation that
Yeah.
in the layover period, you guys can have.
That one down below is not 2 windows at all. The one upstairs is 2 windows, but the one down below is,
Oh, look at that, yeah.
yeah, it is
Yeah,
not,
it's a-
it doesn't
Window,
look,
basically.
doesn't do
They're
anything
different.
for the house at
It looks strange.
all.
Gotcha.
Just some quick calcs. I think we were running through with the existing windows, which are 21 by 60, 2 of them. I believe that's it. That's about 20 square inches. And then with the proposed going down to 42 by 48, we're going down to 2016. So the difference there, I don't have that number yet. But you're losing about 500. Which,
My math is right.
Approximately 20%.
what are we going to? We're losing 43.
About 43% reduction, 37.5%, and 20%.
43, 37,
Going
and
from
20.
36 to 34 is about a 43% reduction.
2,500 divided by 5.
Really the one, yeah, okay, so 43, 37.
500. A fifth is 20%.
Oh, the windows in the kitchen are a little bit bigger?
All right, getting back to our discussion.
I'm gonna move that we lay this over to the next meeting. You guys have shown a willingness to work with people in the past, and I can't think of an instance in which it hasn't resulted in a better product for
Right.
everybody, so.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to lay this over, so we give you guys a chance to sort of figure this out. Any other discussion on the motion?
Oh, one other question.
Yep.
What's the indication next to the dining room, front entrance? Is there any comments on that over here in this area?
I
That
think
sounded like a code
Oh,
compliance.
we can check that.
Yeah, that's what I would say, that,
just,
I don't know.
I think it looks funny to have the window right next to the door.
Well, I mean, I think that must have been an old porch that was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of these you can all work out if we, let's call a roll. So this is to lay it over to next time, and in the interim, these guys, you will work with the city staff and hopefully figure,
Okay. And then they'll just contact me?
yes,
no,
they
yeah,
will.
we will set an
Okay,
appointment with you.
thank you.
Weigert,
All right.
Ford,
Aye.
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
I,
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
No,
Prop,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye. All right, let's move on to item number 2, general development plan and conditional use permit request for a dog daycare and overnight boarding at 2575 State Road 44.
Mr. Chairman,
Nope, pardon me.
you not voting? John not voting?
Oh,
Oh, he should be
I'm
voting
sorry.
now. Yep.
Kiefer,
All right,
there we go.
9-0.
9-0, we're there. Thank you, John and John. Okay, general development plan and conditional use permit request for dog daycare and overnight boarding at 2575 State Road 44.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bet.
So this is a request for a conditional use permit and a general development plan to develop a dog daycare. Presently, the property is zoned business park with a planned development overlay. Here we have the existing land uses. So we've got a kind of a mixture, some industrial uses, some multifamily and single-family residential south. Property is located at a major intersection between West Walka and State Road 44. So here is the site that we're discussing. Again, it is immediately at the corner of that intersection. And here is kind of the rough site plan the developer is proposing for this facility. This is, I don't want to say a chain, but they do, a small business owner that owns a couple of these locations. So this would be a building kind of similar to some of the other facilities. And towards the end of this, we do have some pictures kind of showing other facilities they have built. So here's the site layout, building oriented kind of towards State Road 44 with an entrance off West Walka. First thing to note here very quickly is that as laid out here, this plan would be deficient. Their driveway is only approximately about 80 feet from the right-of-way of 44. Engineer has indicated that will have to be moved back to 175 feet, and the applicant's aware of that and kind of will be tweaking their site plan a little bit to meet some of those criteria. The site plan indicates approximately 18 parking spaces, which would be sufficient based on the proposed use of the building. A final landscape plan has not been provided, but that can be taken care of during the SIP at this time. They're just kind of looking to lock in the land use. They have shown some potential sign drawings. This is a sign similar to what they have used at other facilities. The sign would be in compliance with the business park zoning district, so would meet both the height and size requirements for the freestanding monument. And then again, they're showing an image of the wall sign they've used in the past. Again, both would be code compliant. This is some images showing some of the other facilities they have built. They're looking to build a very similar product at this location. I will note that based on the elevations provided, this building would not meet the architectural design standards that we have in place for commercial buildings. It does not meet the minimum 50% requirement of Class 1 materials on a front or street-facing facade. So the applicant will have to address that as they move forward with their SIP. So with that being said, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit and the general development plan with two conditions, kind of as we discussed during this. Driveway will need to be located a minimum of 175 feet from State Road 44, and that the building elevations will need to be compliant with the city's exterior design standards for commercial structures.
All right, thank you. Technical question, David?
I understand that you said that this is business park compliant by design standards, but I
It is
thought that,
not compliant with the business standards,
Oh,
the
okay.
commercial building standards.
okay, the overline would be in the adjacent business park?
Yes, this is not part of the Universal Business Park,
Okay.
if that's what you're
Oh,
asking.
yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, it is not part of the business park.
I'll reserve the other questions, then, but I'm concerned about the all the parking lot facing 41, or 44. And one other question, I had trouble identifying the neighbors that you contacted.
Yes.
But is AP West Shore and Continental Girbal?
I believe Continental is likely outside of our notification requirements. Bear with me a second, I can tell you. There you go.
I don't know where West Shore is out there, David.
Yeah.
Huh?
I don't know where you're.
AP West Shore is on the corner. See right there where it says AP West Shore?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. We
Yeah,
would have been an adjacent, so I'm not.
so yeah, they may be listed as one of these other, the ownership may be not listed as AP West Shore.
Okay,
We can,
Generally, we take we do the adjacents and everything within 100 feet, so.
like Continental's probably outside of that. AP West Shore said they may just be the actual ownership under the tax records is likely one of these.
okay.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item too?
I'm Melissa Fairchild, 1919 Brookfield Drive, Nina.
Any questions? You're the petitioner?
Yeah.
Any questions for the petitioner, David?
Do you have, two questions. Do you have any problem changing the orientation so that the parking does not face 44?
I'd like the building to face 44, so as long as that's still a possibility, that would be no problem.
They may have to as they shift that driveway down.
Sure.
Kind of flip the building and parking anyways.
100 feet. They're gonna have to flip it around.
You're looking over double the distance it currently is.
I sense you have more
No,
questions.
well, I'd like to hear the
Okay.
flow of the other.
Any other questions for the petitioner, Kathy?
Yes, are you able to comply with the change in building materials?
Sure, not a problem.
It'll be more expensive.
Yes, everything is.
All right. And the fact that the driveway has to be moved, is no problem also.
Right, yeah, that's why we've started with a plan that can be changed. I mean, obviously, this isn't finished, finalized.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioner? Anyone else to add? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else here to speak to the public on this, or from the public? Or once, twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Been moved and seconded. David has something to add?
Yeah, I think there's, one, I'm concerned about the orientation. You know, but secondly, there's a raft of unanswered questions that stormwater, landscaping, building materials. And I think that, I hate to use the word, but gateway, once again, this is, we have an opportunity in a Highway 41 or 44 that's going into the community, that we have a chance to upgrade our standards somewhat, that with all these unanswered questions, I would much prefer to have them come back with a more detailed site plan in addressing these open questions.
We're not there yet, though, right?
No, that's more of what they'll work out between, if, right now they're trying to get a determination if the Plan Commission and the council feels this is an acceptable land use for this parcel. The SIP would address the stormwater, the full landscape plan, the final building materials, all of that.
Are you saying it'll
Before
come
the-
back?
It has to come back for a specific implementation plan. They're just trying to lock in and decide if they want to purchase this parcel. The petitioner's a contingent purchaser. want to make sure the land use is going to be allowed there before they spend all of that money on final plans.
I think the one concern, though, is some of the questions with the layout. Are we
Yep.
going to come back with an adjusted layout? I think we've already laid out the case for they got to improve the Class 1 materials. SIP would have to come back with the landscaping, with the stormwater engineering, all that. So probably the biggest question coming forward from this is, where's that building going? Is it going to be shifted up? Can it be shifted up more north towards the road? And when it comes back, that's what you'll be kind of expecting to see if it's possible.
I have no problem with the land use.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, call the roll.
Iger,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
Your water music.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion approved 9-0.
All right. Moving on, item number
The streetlights are on?
Moving on to item number 3, zone change from SMU Suburban Mixed Use District to SMU PD Suburban Mixed Use District with Plan Development Overlay and approval for a general development plan and specific implementation plan for property located at 2130 to 2150 South Washburn Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the existing Fox World travel location. They presently own 2 buildings and a third lot that is mainly some storm easements. ACTA is proposing to rezone it from the existing suburban mixed use to suburban mixed use PD. We workshopped this several months back, kind of had an open discussion with the applicant about it. The main purpose of this rezoning would be to locate an additional monument sign. By code, they're allowed 1 monument sign for each building. They want to locate that sign slightly closer to the property line than code would presently permit. They tried a variance to the Board of Appeals, were denied. Thought it would be better to come through this avenue and explain to you why they feel it would be appropriate to make that change. So here we kind of have the layout of the 2 buildings. The northern building was their first building, then they purchased the property to the south. As we get to a site plan, you'll see they have made significant changes to kind of the parking and layout of the facilities. So here's kind of the site plan. During a previous phase of the project, a lot of asphalt was removed from that northern lot. A lot of changes were made to kind of improve the site. They then purchased the southern building. So they have approximately a room for about 295 employees at this facility when they do some of their training. So these are their 2 main facilities that they bring individuals from their facilities in and host training events. When they do that, they accommodate about 295 people. They presently only have parking for 193. So if everyone has their own vehicle, they're pretty tight on providing sufficient parking. That is the justification the applicant is giving for why they would prefer to reduce their setback along the property line for the new monument sign. They feel it would be detrimental to their business to have to remove even more parking to be able to push that sign farther back. There's a pretty significant right-of-way width along this area. So there would still be about 30 feet between the actual pavement edge and the sign. And then they're proposing to do some additional landscaping around that sign to soften it. So here are some images of the proposed sign. It is kind of a standard monument sign, would be code compliant with the suburban mixed use district. So staff is recommending approval for the zone change and the specific implementation general development plan. Subject to a base standard modification to allow that sign to be at 6.5 feet as opposed to the 25-foot required. And then staff would also recommend a condition be placed on the property to make sure we have a chance to look at the landscaping they're proposing to put around it.
All right, technical questions. Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
So I'm Anthony Cook with C.R. Meyer. I was the architect for the renovations for both buildings and the layout of the parking lot. We did remove a lot of the parking to provide a better look of the building from the Highway 41 corridor, rather than seeing all that asphalt out there. So we don't have extra parking available, as Mark had mentioned. So, putting the sign back at the 25-foot ease setback would remove even more parking that we're already limited on. So that's really why we don't want to do that.
Answer any questions if we had any?
Yes. Mhm.
Anybody have any questions for the petitioner, as long as he's here? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission. Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the requests. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call roll.
Weigert,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Borsig,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay. Item number 4 is a public hearing on the proposed creation of a tax increment financing district number 34, Oshkosh Corporation Headquarters, designation of boundaries and approval of project plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you said, this is the creation, we're proposing the creation of TID number 34, which is being labeled as Oshkosh Corporation Global Headquarters. This is the proposed TID number 34 boundaries. It's approximately 33 acres located on Lake Shore Municipal Golf Course. That is proposed boundaries for the district. We are proposing to create it as an industrial district. The project plan has about $12.2 million worth of project costs in there, and those are generally divided between $6 million of development incentives and then another $6 million in infrastructure costs. Jeff put that in there. Here's an aerial of the proposed district. As you can see, it's on the golf course, surrounded by some commercial uses to the kind of the southwest, residential neighborhood generally to the east. North. This is the proposed improvements map. If you look on page 20, this is the same map that's shown on page 20 in the district. The map on the left shows the proposed improvements, which include the street, which include the redevelopment of TID number 34 itself. You see that we've included in there street extensions of North Westfield Street and of Keller Avenue. General improvements to those intersections. We're also including some outside of the district costs for a loop trail system that we may be able to develop in there. And then if you look on the north side of the TIF itself, we're looking at doing extension of the Riverwalk, hopefully getting over to the Tribal Heritage Trail. So that's the general gist of the map right now for improvements. Right is just showing the existing conditions. It's an undeveloped. It's a developed golf course. The development assumptions on this, if you look at page 22, will show all the project costs kind of detailed in the project plan. So that lays out and shows you where all the costs are going within this plan. And as I said, the lion's share is between public infrastructure and the development incentive. And then the key assumptions would be located kind of the economic feasibility on page 24, and that's based on the development of an approximately $19 million building. It's going to be about 4 stories, 160,000 square feet is being proposed, and if this moves forward, that would start sometime earlier this year. We do this district does include some of those outside of the district costs, and they relate to both the TID 25 or 35 and 34. The streets Westfield and North Keller are outside of the district, so we're proposing that the plan between what's coming up in 35 and 34 cover those costs, and some of those trail system improvements. We also show some bearing of overhead utility lines along Oshkosh Avenue, some general intersection improvements, things like that. Both plans are, we have them set up to cover improvements to Oshkosh Ave over time, because we know there's going to be some impacts there.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
Any technical questions from us before we open this up? Kathy?
Yeah, on the list of project costs, On the surface, it looks like it's duplicated. $25,000 traffic impact on one TIF and 25,000 traffic impact on the next TIF. So the traffic impact really costs 50,000 total, and you're taking some from each area?
Correct, because
And the same with other things like North Westfield and Keller improvements. You have to add the costs on each one of these districts in order to get the
Correct.
real
That's
cost.
correct. We're dividing, that's a good point. We're dividing the costs among both those two districts. And that's why you'll see some as outside district costs and some inside district costs. So yes, we're dividing that up a little bit.
Okay.
Other technical questions? David, Mike, and Ed.
There is an assumption of the value, construction value. Will there be such a thing as like a developer's agreement that'll be, that value be
Yes,
assured?
that's, right now, we're talking about that would be the minimum value of the development would be $19 million in that change.
So the cash flow would be,
Correct.
Mike?
On the left, the trail system, this would be preliminary, but are those two look like they're standalone? Are they connected?
No, that's just it's just a general showing that we'd like to put trail
to put 'em-
system
okay.
improvements in that area. That's not been laid out yet. I think the Parks Board is going to go about a planning process, but we wanted to put it as a placeholder in the TIF plan. So if we needed to pay for it down the line, we could use some of the increment generated from the development.
Sounds good.
Ed?
For the Riverfront Trail and Riverwalk, how are we envisioning this as part of the larger Riverwalk and trail system? Is there going to be a connection to the
Rainbow? to the
causeway,
south?
part of the trail that goes over Butamore? Is there going to be an extension further down to Waiwash over the Oshkosh Avenue or Congress Avenue Bridge, depending on which side of it you're on? I guess I'm all for it, obviously, right? I'm just wondering if we're building ourselves a standalone segment that's going to get used by no one, or if we're going to connect this into the larger system somehow.
No, that's a good question too. The plan, the goal is to connect up to the trail on the west. So you'd be able to utilize this trail to get on the tribal heritage, to get to the Waiwash Trail.
Okay.
The areas on the east, it's our idea, and we're trying to work it out with the Rainbow Park Master Plan, that the trail, that you will be able to have a continuous trail that goes all the way down to Oshkosh Avenue, and then back over the bridge and again through the neighborhoods over there to through Rivermail. So that is the ultimate plan. We've also added in there these other trail systems to kind of create that local regional trail system. And if you looked at 35, we'd also like to get it, hopefully if we get a link down here, to create a broader regional trail for the neighborhood. That's why in 35 we included some of those district costs for that.
My other question is, I guess, just out of curiosity, for both of these, it shows our administrative cost is in the funding period is 2032 to 2039. Is there a reason? I mean, given that we're looking at between the two of them $510,000 or something like that, I'm just curious. Maybe that sort of has something to do with how this gets funded. I don't know.
Todd, can you come up and help me with that one a little bit? I think it's because most of the costs on the upfront are going to public infrastructure and then the development incentive. So we're keeping that as a placeholder to pay ourselves back for the admin costs.
Right, and as to the specific question, why the funding period for the administrative costs is delayed in this TID, so the way that the development agreement works is that the first $500,000 of tax increment generated by this TID goes to Oshkosh Corporation until that aggregates to $6 million. And then any amounts above the $500,000 for the life of the district also get paid to Oshkosh Truck. So what that means is for roughly the first 10 years of the district, there will be no monies that will stay in the TID that will be available to pay things like administrative expense. So rather than have the city charge funds to the TID and then have to cover that with other cash anyways, we're simply deferring the start of those charges until a later point in time.
So is that so I can understand the math, is that 500 annually, is that capped at 500 annually, and then anything above that 500 goes to the city, or does that get warehoused until that 6 million total?
There's two pieces. So the first 500,000 goes to Oshkosh Truck until we hit $6 million, and then that first 500,000 goes to the city. Anything over 500,000 for the life of the district goes to Oshkosh.
Whether it's year 1 or year 15 or
Correct.
year 20? Okay.
That's correct.
By the way, Todd Taves, if you've seen him here before, Todd's with Ellers. They prepare the TID plans for us.
So the infrastructure costs for stormwater, sewer, and water for the new roads or any of the repaired or modified roads, are those costs paid for through this TID, or are they paid for by those utilities?
Let me address that.
Sure.
So the bulk of the public infrastructure costs within this plan are going to be paid with using existing funding from various sources. There's actually a table, it's found on, just find it here for you. It's found on page 26 of the plan. And as Darren mentioned, we have just over $6 million in public infrastructure costs, and you can see the detail there of where the funding sources come from. So all of those items, other than the last one that says proceeds from future debt issuance of $364,000, all of those other items are either cash that the city presently has on hand from previous borrowings or anticipated grant funds. What this table is saying is that of that roughly $6 million in expenditures, we expect the TID to ultimately repay about 2.2 million of that. That's basically that 500,000 per year once the 6 million is paid. And then that residual amount of 3.9 million is what the city in essence is contributing through both the utilities as well as the capital projects funds that we are not expecting to recover with tax increment financing dollars. So the investment here is partially tax increment financing and then also funds on hand that the city has in various sources.
Back, Ed?
Sorry, one other question. Is it, do you, and I don't know how this typically works here, but do you anticipate special assessments as part of any of this? To any, I mean, obviously here, the property owner is whatever, I guess this is maybe more appropriate for 35 potentially, but I guess for both, will road reconstruction, sewer reconstruction, infrastructure, things like that, will those involve special assessments, or will all of this be paid for through the TID funding?
I don't think, we really need to get the costs. Steve, you gotta, Steve, way from the back is coming up here.
I'm sure he wants to answer that.
But I was hiding him back.
Yeah, that's why he's sitting so close to the front.
And there has not been an exact determination made on that. I believe at this point in time, there are some exclusions for Oshkosh Corp for paying for some of the assessments on some items, but other properties that are served, we have not gone through the full analysis to determine whether or not there would be assessments for those yet or not.
All right, other technical questions, Kathy?
I just thought of something. We're covering all the infrastructure improvements, and we've got trail system place marked, but obviously it's going to take more money to develop what I hope is going to be a new park in and around, and not on the Oshkosh Court property, but the other property. In theory, could TIF money be used to pay for some of that those park improvements? Is there a weasel word here that doesn't include trail system?
Yeah. I think some of that, Tom was just saying, I think some of it is going to be paid for from the beyond that, I don't think that's another thing that has not been set because we don't have the plan in place to know. Theoretically,
Oh, I know, but this is all rushing forward so fast they don't have time to do their.
We don't know where the roads go yet either, but we're going to pay for
we have a general.
That's right.
Generally, could we do that? We can do it to a limited extent. We can't put up we can't pay for buildings, things like that statutorily.
It would have to benefit the tax increment district, and at least in the case of TID number 34, as we just discussed, we're not going to recover all of the costs involved through TIF, so there really is not expected to be any residual dollars from TID 34 that would be able to pay for anything above and beyond what we've got in the plan already.
Okay, all right.
Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today, please step up, tell us your name and address, and any questions or comments that you have.
We're opening a public hearing on
Yes.
34.
Opening the public hearing on TID 34. Come on up, sir.
Hi, Dan Jensen, 1319 Oshkosh Ave. I might not have done enough homework, but I guess financially as a homeowner in potentially TID District 35, what are the financial ramifications as a taxpayer on that property?
That's the
So with the tax increment district, the important thing to remember is that all properties in the city are still assessed the same way, and you still pay the same tax rate in the tax bill. What's different when your property is in a tax increment district, it's where the taxes go. So whatever value is on the ground as of January 1st of 2018, the property taxes from that value will continue to go to the city, the school district, the technical college, and the county as they do now. But to the extent that properties in the district go up in value over the life of the district, the additional taxes on that incremental value, those go into the TIF fund to pay for the program of improvements that the city intends to make within the district. So if your property's in a tax increment district and nothing happens to it, in other words, there's no reinvestment in the property, it doesn't change uses, there's not going to necessarily be an increase in the value other than just the fact that, properties go up and down in value due to the economy. So it really will not affect the property taxes you pay unless something physically changes with respect to the use of the property and investments made to further improve the property, things of that nature. So ultimately, it's a question of where the taxes go, not how much the property's taxed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? Okay, that closes the public hearing for TID number 34. Back to the commission.
For approval.
I think it's been moved by Dave and seconded by Robert. Does that sound fair? Any discussion on the motion? Yes, John.
I just like to state that, the use of these enterprise fund cash balances to fund things that are in the TIF, if I'm understanding that right, I just don't agree with that. If this is a project, a TIF area, the project should be set up that the funds, obtained through the TIF, through the increment, should pay for those things. We're polling, I'm on the Stormwater Committee, I'm the chairperson for the Stormwater Utility Commission, or committee. This polling, it's $827,000, if I understand that correctly. That's funds that we have on hand from projects that have been under budget. But we use those funds on hand, and we make sure that we incorporate those funds on hand into the next year's projects or to fund things that are unexpected, like Everline Street last year that had to be redone. So to pull those funds from our cash reserves, I don't feel is correctly done here. I think this should be paid for. These things should be paid for. Any street improvements, everything involved with the street improvements in the TID should be paid for by the TID, not by other enterprise funds in the city. So, and I also very concerned that if we are doing some road improvements, that property owners are not assessed on these things. If the improvements are being done for the benefit of the TIF, then the TIF should pay for those things and not be assessed. That's my opinion on that too. So, thank you.
Ed?
I would tend to agree with that. I have some misgivings about, and I'm going to lump 35 and 34 together here because I can't vote on 35, but I think it does concern me a little bit that we are, and I love the idea of the sort of the residential TIF component that creates the revolving loan fund and all that sort of stuff. I think that's a really novel way for us to do some things here that we haven't been able to do before. So I think that's a great idea. I I'm a little nervous voting on these without knowing whether or not special assessments are planned, because I guess I would take the alternate tact is that I'd be more comfortable using those enterprise funds if it meant that we could guarantee that there were no special assessments as part of this. That's something that, and that's probably just because I don't have the same level of understanding of those that you do from your committee, but I really would be concerned if we passed this and came back 6 months down the road and said, we're going to fund it with special assessments too. So it's hard to say yay or nay on these, because that's a big component of whether or not we feel as a commission that this meets what we need it to meet, I guess. That's my misgiving here. So I guess I can say that I support the adoption of TID 34 with the understanding that we're going to do everything we possibly can to avoid those special assessments. So, that's not something we can, condition this on, obviously, but it is something that I would hope gets conveyed down the line as you guys are working on this, that it's something that I think, I've talked to some other folks, and there's a lot of misgivings on that front.
To be frank, I think if there were special assessments, then I think all hell would break loose.
I don't disagree. We've come pretty close to pitchforks and torches on this one already, and I don't.
Hopefully that message is being sent to
Yeah,
the city staff.
exactly.
David?
And I concur, but that's really what, the political decision.
Right.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
Ours is the development, is this in the best interest of the community and the comprehensive plan?
Kathy?
Yeah, well, I'm with David that we aren't empowered to vote on the details that we're talking about.
And that's why I
here,
would
even though we're
condition it.
passionately
Right,
interested,
right,
of course. But
right.
So my vote is not going to be on the numbers, but I understand your points, and I wish we could vote on it and have more discussion, more background. But our vote is, are these the right improvements to be made, public improvements for these areas? And I think they are. So in spite of the fact that I'd love to weigh in on this, I think we need to vote.
All right. With that, any further discussion? Been moved and seconded. Let's call the roll, please.
Weigert.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Borsick.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion approved 9-0.
Moving on to item number 5, public hearing on proposed creation of tax increment financing district number 35, Oshkosh Avenue redevelopment, designation of boundaries, and approval of project plan.
So if you see the general gist with the two plans is we're using a lot of anticipated TIF dollars to pay for public infrastructure costs that are associated with doing the improvements and upgrades to Oshkosh Avenue and extending out Northwest Field, North Keller. Same thing. You'll see a lot of project costs in this particular district that are aimed at that. It's about a $12 million TIF. $10 million in the TIF is being allocated for infrastructure development, and then another $1.6 million would be that facade revolving loan program that we want to take from positive increment that we get down the line to create a rehabilitation program for some of the housing and commercial businesses in this area that can take advantage of it at some point down the line. What this is it's a district that's being created as a district in need of rehabilitation or conservation. Basically what that means is we have a number of older structures in this district that could potentially benefit through having some type of rehabilitation programming. If you look at this district, it's about 60 acres going from I-41 on the west all the way down to the Fox River on the east. You have a number of different types of properties. It's a mixed use area. Generally, it's an older type of construction in here. The average of the houses is about 1920. There's very few newer houses that have been built in that particular district area. Then you have some older commercial structures that were developed pre-code, meaning most of them have some type of non-conforming status on the property. That non-conformity, whether you're residential, whether you're commercial, makes it more challenging to redevelop, to do some of the improvements. The age of the structure, with the vast majority of them being created before the UDC, which the UDC is the building code, when you're going to do major updates, those can be challenging. So that's why we created that rehabilitation loan program we'll talk about in a minute, is to handle some of those issues that we know, and some of these challenges that as people go to try and redevelop and update their homes, we want to have a program set up that they can take advantage of, like we've done with some of the neighborhoods. We have a specific housing rehabilitation and loan program set up for if you're in a neighborhood association. We think that we can do something similar in that area. So that's what the district looks like. This is kind of an aerial of the district. We've made it a larger district to capture some of the increment some of the development that's occurring, potentially to pay for some of the improvements in there. That's why we went down to the old Kmart site, because we know that something's potentially happening on that site. We can capture some of that increment to do some of these street improvements in that area. This would be a proposed improvements map, and it's not oriented right, so west is over here on the bottom. It's just it's such a large area. But this shows you kind of what we're looking at doing with the proposed improvements with that what was it, $12 million funding. We're looking at we're going to try and see if we can't bury overhead utility lines. Again, we have to go through and do the design to see what we can do in that area. Improvements to the roundabout here at Keller. Improvements at, of course, North Westfield and Oshkosh Avenue. Streetscaping improvements. We're going to put some money in there to do some streetscaping improvements along that corridor. Regional stormwater pond to pay for some of the development in that particular area. Going down to Oshkosh Avenue at North Sawyer Street, what we'd like to do, and we've had it kind of the plan, is to be able to extend Sawyer to hook up with Rainbow Drive, so we have that kind of a nice convenient entrance, because it's a nice convenient entrance to Rainbow Park there. So as you can see, we've been buying properties in that area to provide for that. We bought 2 properties that are down, so that would be another improvement within that district. And then, of course, as was in the last district, we have trail system improvements. We'd like to create that regional trail system in this area, linking back to the park. And the other part of the plan itself is creating that revolving loan grant program. So we're creating that program for when we start developing positive tax increment, that we can fund a rehabilitation program and help some of the people who are going to be impacted by the increased traffic, by the increased visibility. As this is a gateway corridor into the community, we'd like to create a program to help out those properties. Existing conditions, this is just when we put on the map in need of rehabilitation, we simply put it on, we looked at the average age of the structure. If it was built before 1980, it's pre-UDC, it's going to be more challenging to do updates to that project, or you're in some type of non-conforming status. It doesn't mean your house is in horrible shape, it just means that there might be things that are more challenging. When you want to do updates for it, we want to create a program to help you out for that. The one thing, the development assumptions, and that's kind of an important one. The development assumptions for this are on page 24. Now we don't have any guarantees at this point. We've been potentially working with developers, but the key assumptions and the economic feasibility on this plan are shown on page 24, and it shows that we're hoping, and we've had discussions about a hotel developing in that area. That hotel would be a $14 million hotel. Convenience store, we know that's up and down. We're not sure where that's going to go, but we got about $3.5 million on that. We have an office building and 2 tenant buildings that we're looking at maybe another $6.5 to $7 million. Potentially a restaurant was coming in at about $2.5 million, and then a bank at about $2 million. So that's some of the key economic development assumptions that we're working off to fund the improvements in this plan. There's some other things that might occur. There's other development opportunities in this area. So if you look at, which we haven't included as an assumption, but you have these areas where Master Loop is in the area to the west. that's an area that could potentially redevelop during the time frame of this TIF plan. We could then capture that development. We put even more money into the rehabilitation program. The old Howard Johnson site, that's been included, but we've had no discussions on the site, but we included it just in case, so we can capture that value down the line, and again fund that program. Did I miss something on that, Todd? So we have this. Todd, when did we have this thing closing out? Was it? Are we
2043, which would be 4 years prior to its maximum.
As a rehabilitation TIF, it's potentially open for 27 years. Based on our projections, we could close it potentially in 24, or it could be taken out longer if we have a higher run on the rehabilitation programming, or development doesn't occur. That's it.
Technical questions from the commission. Ed?
The revolving loan fund program, I probably have 10 questions on that alone, but we're probably not there yet. So how does that, the procedure for that, the process, what sort of dollars get allocated to each property? How is that determined? All that sort of stuff. How will those standards, how will those procedures be determined? Is that administrative and you guys just sort of put it out there, or is that something that council approves? How do you anticipate that working?
We haven't actually created the program. We have some models for the program based on our existing our existing programs. But with this one, what we're going to utilize is the RDA, the Redevelopment Authority. We'll develop a program, have that approved by the RDA Authority, and have the RDA start to approve projects in the area based on a minimum set of standards. We haven't developed, what's the maximum amount, what's the minimum amount. I guess the idea for us is, with those TIF funds, we want to do as much as we can to improve the values and get the values starting to move up in this particular area, because we all benefit from increased values on the properties.
I just wonder if that wouldn't be something that wouldn't maybe be appropriate for a joint workshop with the RDA once they start looking at that.
Sure.
I feel like there's probably some things, just based on, looking at it, that we may have as priorities to help support that they may just not be aware of. So it wouldn't be a bad idea for that.
There's a myriad of programs out there. We've been trying to do a lot of research on the communities that are utilizing similar programs. So it's it's like everything. It's like when we're looking at a zoning ordinance, we're trying to grab what we think is the best and most suitable for the environment that we're in. Same thing. I think we have a good basis with our housing rehabilitation, our existing housing rehabilitation programming, but I think we'll have some more flexibility that we could work with, maybe some facade and maybe landscaping improvements for some of those commercial properties.
That's what I was, I mean, there's it's not, necessarily the, the central city rehab where you kind of know what you're getting new roofs, you're getting new siding, things like that. This is maybe a little bit more broad because we've got so much mixed use in there.
Yeah, you've got a mixed bag of properties in there, in some in
there's
mixed
new
conditions.
construction, too.
Yeah, there's some new construction in there.
So-
Some that were built after 1980, and there's some duplexes, things like that. But in general, the housing stock itself is generally pretty old. When you're looking at a 1920, if you lived in an old house, that there are challenges with a 1920s house. That's why we're proposing to create a program to try and help out with the rehab.
No, and I think it's a great idea. It's a priority that we've talked about before here too. So I just think when it comes time to getting down into the nuts and bolts of how it's going to be administered, how it's going to be, what are the priorities of the program, I think, we'd certainly maybe like to have a little bit of input.
And that might be a joint workshop between council, RDA, and Plan Commission, so we're all kind of on the same page.
Excellent. Other technical questions regarding this? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today, remember, state your name and address and tell us what you think.
Chair's opening the public hearing.
Yep, we just opened the public hearing, thank you. Sorry.
I just asked.
You new to this job?
Those are the magic words, right? Like the statutory magic word you have to say.
I like to make sure.
Come on up, sir.
My name is Bob Cruz, and I live at 1510 Oshkosh Ave. I'm a tenant in one of the duplexes that were mentioned before. I'm here just for a group of tenants who've had absolutely no illumination on this whole process. We were told that we may lose our homes. We're just looking for, this isn't about tearing down homes to widen Oshkosh Ave or straighten it out. We really don't know. We're all in the dark over there. So
Thank you. Who can?
those of us who are not property owners anyway, so.
From, you're at 1510?
Yes,
I'm not sure which one that is.
second house off the corner of Pinaqua on the north side of Oshkosh Avenue. It's one of the up-down duplexes
Oh,
that's side
right
by
o-
side there.
Right in this
Yes,
area, right
yep.
in this area?
Yep, right there.
In that area, I think we'd just be looking at doing general street, potentially streetscape improvements. Steve, are we doing anything to Oshkosh Avenue? Do you see anything happening in this particular stretch? I mean, I think we're doing a traffic impact analysis that will look at whether, how much extra land that we need in this corridor that's redeveloping. I'm not sure down here, with the exception of the area at Sawyer, if we're doing any, do you aware of anything?
The traffic impact analysis covers the entirety of Oshkosh Avenue corridor from west of Highway 41 all the way to the bridge over the Fox River. So at this point in time, we don't have anything. We weren't really anticipating a lot in there, but there would be the possibility at some point in time that something could need to happen depending on how things change in development out there. If traffic massively picks up because a lot of the area redevelops, well, the roadway as it's designed today may not handle that.
We're going to try to accommodate, I mean, we're not going into this process with the exception of the Sawyer Street area, knowing that we don't want to have to get in the business of having to acquire all these properties. And right now, none of that's on the docket. Right here, Sawyer coming through the Rainbow, there's a potential, we have some options there, whether we acquire the houses to the north or potentially reps on the east. That's still kind of in the air. That would be the only case where I'd see, us doing some acquisition. In these areas, we want to try and stay away from that. Most of these structures along Oshkosh Avenue in this stretch, those are where your older structures are. They're built closer to streets, so that's where we have to look at those. They're all non-conforming from a structure setback, so it's, except for I think the ones that you're in, those are the newer ones. Those were built in sometime in the 80s. I think those are probably set back far enough, but it's not our plan to go wholesale through it and grab houses in that area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That's, a lot of people had that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Going once? Come on up again, sir.
I guess Dan Jensen, 1319 Oshkosh. I'm just curious, I think it's called West Algoma Park is not included on that, and the park with the big smokestack against the Fox River, I forget the name of that, is included in that. Why would that be, and what is the ramifications of including a park in a TID district?
We might have included just because of the intersection improvements in this area. It's not, we weren't including the park, we were probably we wanted to make sure that the intersection itself was covered, because we know at some point, or we're proposing district costs to improve this intersection. So there's really no ramifications, because there's no value there. We're not proposing any projects in that district. We did it to round out the district. If you look at the way we have the district set up, it's generally only covering that first parcel that's adjacent to Oshkosh Avenue. We could have went down here to this park. It doesn't really do anything in that area. But by including the park, it's all public lands. We own it. The project costs are in this area, so it could be there. From our standpoint, we could back it out if we wanted to.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, ma'am.
Lynette Radke, 1817 Oshkosh Ave. I just wondered if there were any plans for that part of the area,
1817.
kind of across from Robbins.
Oh, in this stretch in here, or this stretch over here?
Past the roundabout, what's where Robbins is?
Yeah,
Right
but
across from Robbins.
Right across in this
Right
area. That's part of what the traffic analysis is going to bring. We know that there's going to be increased traffic going on here. If anything, it's our idea that if anything happens in that area, it's coming off the north side, because that whole area is going to come under some period of redevelopment, and we can work with that developer. if we need additional area for a lane, for a turning lane or something like that, we can get it from the north side. We don't need it, just theoretically at this time from the south side. So there's nothing really proposed at this time, but we haven't engineered out everything, so we don't know if we need any easements anywhere else. But generally, we're going to try and keep everything on the north side where we can.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? Okay, that closes the public comment for this issue. If we come back to the commission, and we have an opportunity to discuss. David?
I'm supportive, but I do have a question. I understand the boundaries and why the boundaries are created, but in specifically regards to the Oshkosh Avenue traffic study, is this the opportunity to bundle it with Congress Avenue, at least up to Algoma Boulevard? Certainly a very, very difficult set of two blocks. And this may be the opportunity to look at that whole linkage, and that's probably about where does 21 end?
Yeah. I don't have an answer on that one. I'll have to check with. I don't know. I think we just went down to the bridge. Alan, did we just go down to the bridge for the TIA down to Sawyer? Yeah, we just did that down to Sawyer. That doesn't mean that we can't in the future look at the other side and once we get this side set. But
I would think that God bless whoever for proposing to fix that intersection, because it's bizarre. Once you do that, I think it probably leads the way to what's next in terms of what David's talking about. If you really do improve that intersection. Yeah, but I could be wrong. Yes, Michael.
David, would you see the TID going across the river as well? Is that what you're
No,
thinking?
I understand why they did the limits, but it's just sort of recognizing that when you get to that next.
It's the same road.
It's the same road, and you at the base of the bridge you have equally as a bad traffic situation with trying to get into the residential area, trying to get into the commercial buildings there, and.
I would almost think that that's, we've talked about for years with what we're going to do around the university and the whole bypass and what we should be doing with the one-way pairs. I'd almost think that'd be more appropriate to be included in that discussion because they do link so closely up. So I think we'll look at it at some point. I think it will get looked at. I just at right now we got a lot to handle with this section of Oshkosh Ave. Yep.
Other discussions or questions about this?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Biger,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Present.
Hintz,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion approved 9-0.
801.
8-0.
Oh, 801, I'm sorry.
God help me.
All right, any other items of business before we adjourn for workshop?
No.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to
Second.
adjourn.
Move to, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry?
Don't.
Too excited.